In this video, we're going to be going through how to model 3 basic shapes. Each one of these increasing in difficulty ever so slightly, and using different types of commands to model each. To start, we're going to be focusing on modeling this shape. To model this shape, the first thing that I would do is go to the front view. You can also do that along the bottom left. Once in this view, we'll use the curve tool, and we're going to draw out about half of the shape, and then we're going to mirror it to create the full general shape of the object we're modeling. So to start, I'm just going to click a point. If we hold shift, it's going to keep that in orthographic. It's going to create the general shape here, not worrying too much about dimensions. So something like that will do. And then we'll finish out by, if we hover over this endpoint with Smart Track turned on down here, it'll then create a guide for us, a temporary guide that we can use to align these 2 points together, so we're ending roughly where we started. And if we right click, we then have half of our shape. If we now type in mirror and hit enter, we can select our curve, and then it's going to ask us to create the mirror plane. So we're just going to draw between these 2 points. And then now we should have our complete shape. We can join these 2 curves together, because they're separate at the moment, into one object by selecting and typing join and hitting enter. We can then modify this overall shape a little bit to make it a bit more in line with what we want. So if you come over to here and hit this button, if you left click this, it's going to turn on the edit points. If you move around any of these points, it's going to change the shape of our object. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of these, just increase the height a little bit. I'm going to reduce the height on this one a little, and then I'm just going to make the shape just a little bit wider. Just adjusting the proportions by changing the shapes. And you can find something that you're happy with. Then you can hit escape. Now if we go back to perspective view, like so, we can see that we have our curve. What we can then do is, if we want to fill this in with a surface, the best way to do that would be with a planar surface. So if you type in planar surface into the command line and hit enter, it's going to ask us to select a curve. And when we do, we're going to get a complete surface. To then extrude this out, all we need to do is type in extrude surface, select our surface, and then just drag it out. And there we go. That's our first shape completed. The next shape that we'll be modeling is this. As you can see, this has a bit more complexity to it than the previous one, with some of these angled slopes. Okay, so to start with this one, again, I would start by going to a orthographic view, like the front view down here. I'm then going to start by drawing a rectangle using this tool, which is going to be the overall shape. I'm then going to grab this polyline tool, and I'm going to draw this stair shape. Again, not too focused on dimensions, but just trying to get the overall form. And I'm just going to finish off the shape around the edges, and then finish the command. So now we have 2 curves. And then what I'm going to do is go back to perspective. I'm just going to separate these 2 to create a bit of space between them. I'm just going to merge them like that. So there are a few ways that we could do this, but the one that I'm going to show you is one with a bit more interesting commands. So what we're going to do first is, once again, use the planar surface tool to create a surface out of these curves. We're then going to extrude the surface until it meets with our wall over here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do just quickly is I'm going to make this into a planar surface. and then we have the makings of our shape. So what we want to do is we want to take these points here and we want to drag them to the top, and the same with this part. So what we should do is take this whole poly surface and explode it using the explode tool so that we have each of the separate shapes. We're then going to use something that we used on curves earlier, the edit points. So if we select these three surfaces and turn on our edit points, you'll see that you have these little points down here that you can select. So what we're going to do is we're just going to select these points, and then holding shift we're also going to select these points just here, and holding shift once again we're just going to select these points just here also. Actually, we won't need these points for now, so let's just focus on these ones. So I'm then going to use the move command by typing move. We can then click on our points and drag them all the way up. And there we go. And then the next thing that we should do is hit escape to clear our points, select these three surfaces, and then type points on this time rather than clicking the button to turn our edit points on. We can then go through and select these, select this point and the other point located there, and move those. So typing move, dragging it up, selecting the area, and hitting escape. So now we have the overall form. We just need to once again join all of these surfaces back into one complete poly surface. And we just highlight them all, type join, and then we have our finished poly surface. Our third shape is using a different set of operations to create. And this is what it looks like. So to start with this one, I'm going to go to the top orthographic view, and I'm just going to create the D-shaped base first. So I'm going to create the straight curve, and then I'm going to draw out a straight line like this, and I'm going to draw out another just down here using the smart track hovering to create a guide. We're then going to use the arc tool, so I'm going to hover over those two lines to find the center between them, and then going to draw between the two parts to get the full shape, and then going to join that together into one solid curve. I'm then going to make the vertical piece, so I'm going to start by drawing something like this. I'm then going to copy it as the end, and then I'm going to rotate by grabbing one point, clicking and rotating. Holding shift will snap to 90 degrees. I'm just gonna then grab the arc tool again and draw between like this. I'm just going to use the offset tool, so clicking on our curve, typing offset, and then going to add an offset to here. For the distance I'm just going to click. I'm going to click on a point on our curve, then kind of click out to how far I want to offset by. I want to do something that's quite thick, so maybe something like this, and then clicking to end the command. Then what we need to do is trim these curves. So if we select everything and type trim, we can then click on these end parts here to get rid of them, and then we can join this all together into one full curve. Okay, if we go back to perspective view, we're going to notice that they're both quite flat on the ground. So what I'm going to do first is work with this shape, and I'm going to type in planar surface to get the surface. And I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm then going to extrude the surface upwards to give it a thickness. And then just to fill this hole, I'm going to use the cap. Next, we're going to grab this, and we want to make it stand up vertically. So we're going to grab this red curve here, holding shift, we're going to flip it vertically. The curve that's on the ground we don't need anymore, so we can just delete that. We can then grab the green line and rotate it 180 degrees, just to orientate it in the right direction. And then we're just going to extrude the surface to give this some thickness also. And then we're going to cap. So now when we move this around, we're going to have this surface left over that we're going to delete because we don't need it anymore. And then we're going to use the move tool to grab this object from the center on this baseline, and we're going to drag it to the center, to the midpoint of this line here. We can then choose our object. We're just going to move it in a little bit so that they're going to intersect like that. Right now these are separate objects, but if we want to join them together so that this shape is cutting this area out of here and connecting properly, we can use the Boolean union tool. So if we type in Boolean union and hit enter, it's going to ask us to select the surfaces we want to merge. So we're going to select this poly surface and then this poly surface and hit enter. And now we have one full completed mesh. And if I go on to ghosted mode for you, just a second, we can see that our surfaces are connecting perfectly and there's no longer any more of this on the inside of this shape. And there it is, that's our shape completed.